Recording, not the recording. We really lucked out that first time. And I think it was because we were under pressure, we just went ahead with it and it worked.
Welcome to the Johnny Random Show. I'm your host, Johnny Random, and today's topic is inflation. And I am getting a call in the middle of this.
What is going on?
Yeah. Suck the energy out of me.
Yeah, I was noticing.
I'm your host, Johnny Random, and today's topic is inflation. Super exciting. So today we're going to dive. A certain level of inflation is normal, or it's considered normal and good, right? So as the economy expands, we increase in the GDP. We also want a little bit of increase of inflation. And most economists agree that 1 to 2% is at baseline good. 3% is considered normal. So let's get into how we got to 6%, which is currently, I think the last thing that I heard is we're already at 6% in 2021. And we are going to get into later on what we think that can fix it. But first of all, like I said, I'm going to start with my take on how we got here. So wrote down a couple of things. So first of all, NAFTA. In the 1994, whatever year it was, in the 1990s, and China entering the WTO. These are policy decisions and that were made, and I believe they have far-reaching implications. And if you're paying at all any attention in the 2016 election, when Trump and Hillary got into, she signed it or was a player in bringing about NAFTA, and she supported it fully through her time in politics, and Trump was against it. And so, and claimed that it led to the hollowing out of America. And which I tend to think that history is on that side of things, and how that affected wages, depressing wages, because our jobs, a lot of these good paying jobs are now being done overseas, very cheap labor. And so the corporate or the, upper class of society is continuing to see their profits and their, bottom line increase in these corporations, where the average everyday American is not getting the price increase. Is not seeing a large, a same or proportional trajectory on their wages. Mm-hmm. And you also have the price of things going up because you have to, as part of the economy continues to expand and the stock market continues to rise and everything is good and happy and golden in the world, there's a certain percentage of the people that are left behind. Then cost of living goes up, as it does. You have any kind of crisis causes stress points. And I think that's what caused a lot of the 2008 recession. Not caused, but it was a huge factor and underlying current in, what was going on. And then, just recently with the supply chain shortages that we've seen with COVID shutting down the world and everything being backlogged. I order supplies for my office, and the price of them compared to a year ago is absolutely insane. The cost of things and back orders on certain things that we order. And in my environment, the dental environment, where I work in a dental office, you can't just pass those prices on to the customer so easy, because you have network contracts with insurance, and the price of insurance, what they paid, a maximum insurance was maybe $1,000, $1,500 10 years ago. It's still $1,000 or $1,500 is all the insurance company's going to pay. The rest you come out of pocket. So those prices directly get transferred to the patient, but there's really not a lot of margin that you can squeeze people anymore, because the primary payers, the insurance companies, are going to pay more. So that's just a little bit of a side and a little bit of personal anecdote there. But so supply chain shortage, you have the NAFTA, you have policy things, all that set up to cause, in my view, this perfect storm where you can't get the parts for your cars. So your cars manufacturing goes down. The sawmills have shut down for a year. So then the price of wood skyrockets. You have panic buying because, oh no, the world's running out of toilet paper. So everybody goes out and buys that all at the same time. And cause that is more of a not real shortage, but it caused a real shortage. So there was a psychological aspect to it. So, but then you have people taking a step back and saying, I haven't got a raise in 20 years and the cost of my, I get $1 raise every year and, or maybe 50-cent raise every year. And the price of my house has doubled. The cost of my rent has doubled. And so these things are going unproportionately. And so when you come back into the labor force, you're like, you know what, I'm not going to take a job that's going to pay me what I was making a year ago. That's not what I want to do. I want to go get, more education. And I want to pursue a different field. Yeah. So you have a labor shortage. So you have right now a labor shortage going on, a supply shortage going on, all of these shipping docks, the cargo ships, there's like 50 cargo ships right now parked off of the coast, and there's trucker shortage. And I've heard people say there's not a shortage of truckers. It's just you can't be in two places at once. You get 15, it's like you can handle one thing as it comes and move it along. That's how the supply chain works. But you shut it down and this builds up. Now you have 30,000 things that get over here and 30,000 people that want something. And there's only one of, so there's like, you got to hire 10 more people to do the same job, but people aren't wanting these jobs.
Turns out seasonal trucker jobs are not popular.
Yeah, but they do want the job, but then they're going to be driving overnight, or they want more money because they're working more hours or crazy hours, or this has a demand, so you should pay more. So there's which causes the price of things to go up. So all of these things are what, in my mind, is causing these prices to go up. Gas prices going up. We had a couple hurricanes last month. We have Louisiana, like, a lot of the pipelines, the offshore drilling and stuff that we do comes through there. So I really think that you had a perfect storm this season. And so that's how we got here. I think that it's a combination of, if we hadn't been manufacturing things overseas, then we wouldn't be in a place where as much manufacturing overseas. You wouldn't be in a place where the supply chain was so stressed. And, this sort of globalization caused such a stress when there was a global pandemic for these things to happen. And then that is contributing to the prices of everything going up. So all of this to say, I'm blaming globalization for inflation and the fact that there's shortages on jobs, there's shortages in your grocery store. You can't get toilet paper because the global elites. How about that? So what do you agree with or disagree with in that take?
I would say
that it's articulated into words.
I would say that there's just something that I'd like to tag on to that mostly to begin with. So serious questions require serious answers. I'm a big fan of, not taking yourself too seriously and, telling a good joke every once in a while. But at least if you are going to answer a question, you need to make sure that you answer the question well, that you're not just making a joke out of somebody else's serious question. President Psaki, Jen Psaki, oh wait, she's the secretary. I'm sorry, she's the only competent person in the administration. I forget sometimes. But President Psaki, you're frozen. You froze. What's
not
going
over
on?
Here?
Huh?
I'm not frozen.
Okay, well, you're frozen on my side.
Is the audio frozen?
No, the video was.
Oh, sorry.
It's all good.
Oh, I can hear you just fine though.
Anyways, yeah. So, at any rate, one of the things that she was asked by a reporter was, what about the goods that we're getting? Food and backlog on treadmills. And I don't know what that reporter was thinking when he said, treadmills. Maybe he was trying to lighten the mood a little bit. But then she, made light of the treadmills, but really didn't answer the question. Basically, she said, it's a good thing that we have this inflation. It's basically a sign that the economy is recovering because people are ordering more. And That's a viable answer for a part of the question, a very small part of the question. And that's what you usually
I
get.
love that.
Huh?
Thank you for saying that.
Yeah. Because
Now
that's
you're
the thing.
frozen.
When you don't want to
Right.
answer a full question, what you do is you answer the one part of the question that you like.
Well,
So
no, I don't think
another
she's
great.
wrong, and I love it because to me, again, this comes back to like left versus right, and they always want to be like, oh, Christmas is gonna be there's gonna be shortages this year for Christmas. So what? How can we put this on the current administration?
Yeah.
Well, to me, it's not on the current administration. It goes back years and years and years. It goes back to the 90s, which you could say the current administration had a hand in policies. Yes. However, we're the reason why I love that you said it is because it allows me to play devil's advocate, which is my favorite role to play.
Devil don't need no
I think that she's right. So people there was not as much demand during the pandemic, right? And for certain things, right? We saw home buying is still demand, and we had the price outrageous for like lumber and things like that. But now you're seeing that with the rest of the economy is coming back in, and the demand is super high, but we still haven't ramped up the production yet. And because all the production is overseas, it's bottlenecked. So she's not wrong to say that it's a good thing. But she is, you know what I mean? Like, so it's not, so I don't have a problem with her answering the question that way. I mean, to me, I don't, I see that's like, okay, that's the only logical line that she could put out there other than accepting the responsibility for the fact that we have a huge mess and, what are we going to do to fix it? Well, are we going to, the infrastructure bill is absolutely nonsensical because it doesn't actually address most of these roads and bridges. Okay, great. But we're talking about all of our stuff is made in other countries. That's the problem. We're going to build roads and bridges to China. So I think that the problem is much bigger than they're allowing themselves to admit. So I'm sorry if I interrupted you, but I really felt like I wanted to play devil's advocate for a second there.
Well, there's also another thing. So you've mentioned NAFTA and you've mentioned these other different rules that have been made, and that it was previous administrations. But I think we need to take a second and look at the way the Constitution is formed. Who creates law? It is not the administration that creates the law. The administration is to enforce law. So if laws are messing up the trade policies, then what really needs to happen is we need to be looking at who's making these laws. Why is the administration making laws? There's supposed to be the executive branch of government, not the legislative. So there needs to be a look at the
right. They set the agenda, and then the Congress makes the laws, obviously. But
is that the way it's supposed to work?
The president's supposed to set the agenda?
Yeah.
I mean, traditionally, historically, going back as long as, at least FDR, I don't know. I think so. I mean, to me, it stands to reason. At least in our modern era of politics, yes, I would say. I mean, maybe people get on here and comment and tear me apart for that, but
that would be wonderful, I think, because the fact is that we've wandered so far away from the constitutional form of government that we don't even realize how far off we are.
Well, that brings up a whole other topic now, because yes, I agree, but also the Constitution and the founding, and I'm definitely, think that the Constitution, to me, in my opinion, is the most masterful work of, historical significance that you can point to. I mean, in modern, in the last 500 years at least, it's the most important document. Beautiful, and it's fantastic. This separation of powers is addressing so many different things. It's well thought through. It came from a good place, but there is a, you're making a document in a time period where you have a certain established norms. You would never have your manufacturing made in another country that you have to rely on to the extent. I mean, now, okay, then you have colonial powers, right? So they get their tobacco, their sugar, their, all these different raw goods from the colonies, and they would get those at a cheap price, and they would bring it back and basically do the same thing that we did to inflate their economy. But now I think you have an interesting situation where China is a world power, and they hold all the power, and they hold the economic power, and they also hold the manufacturing power. And so they've got us in a chokehold, whereas the colonies had the imbalance. You had a colonial power, which is, doesn't have any sort of military strength, no way to fight back, and is being exploited, and, which is awful. But you have to have some level of self-reliance, right? Or do you? I think you do.
That kind of goes back to my argument. So what the U.S. government was set up to be was, and I'm not saying go back to the Articles of Confederation. I'm saying, like, even when they rebooted it, when they redid and made the current Constitution, it was intending to divide powers so that rash decisions didn't get made, and they weren't made by autocrats at the top, but those who were elected and making the crucial decisions. The idea was to keep the federal government, very small and handling only the most crucial, time-sensitive issues, while the local governments were able to actually deal with the day-to-day things. The biggest of the things would be the trade paragraph. I'm not sure what you call that. I'm blanking out.
What?
The interstate travel.
Oh, yeah, I know what you're talking about. Commerce clause or something.
Yeah, the Commerce Clause. The Commerce Clause has been used to cover so much, but basically it was intended to make sure that some type of uniform system were to exist, just like the whole currency system is designed to make sure that some uniform way of commerce happened in between the states. And those things are needed, and there's a degree to which you need it, but there's a degree to which, if you over empower the federal government, you disempower the states, and the people can no longer reach the people that can make the decisions anymore.
I think what you're describing is a balance, right? So as the world became more technological, as we have cars that can get you from here to New York in a day, in 24 hours, you can be halfway across the country. In 48 hours, you can be on the other coast. As you can get a massive amount of supplies and things across the ocean. As you have the Commerce Clause, these things have been too broadly applied in cases, and you have a disproportionate response to an actual need, right? And the disproportional response is being made by autocrats, what in the world? Autocrats that have
transforming your economy.
Yeah, autocrats roll out. And so these group of people have this, disproportionately benefit from these policies, and that is a problem. And you're supposed to have the sort of checks and balances, and you're supposed to have a population, a citizenship that votes these people out. That's supposed to what's happened. When there's this imbalance happens, you're supposed to be accountable to the people. But we have decentralized voting across the board. Doesn't matter what party you're in. We only want these certain people to come out, and we only want them to come out at certain times, and we want them to do exactly what we want them to do, and we want them to fund certain campaigns, and not these people paying campaigns. Those people are radical. Those people are not. These, whatever. These people are happy to go along with the status quo, and status quo is the oligarchs running the show. Yes. So autocrats.
That brings to mind, like, honestly, if the American people had the ability to vote Dr. Fauci out, I'm pretty certain he would have been voted out. He's got to be one of the least popular bureaucrats because he is trying to be so front and center. Like the American people don't want somebody who they don't have any say in their being there to be telling them what to do health wise. Maybe pointing to the
Yeah,
science,
I don't
sure,
want to
but
bring up
just the
Fauci,
way that he
although
does it.
I take the example. I like what you're saying, but I don't want to get into that yet. That's another episode. That's like episode 4 or 5, I think, where we're going to do vaccines. So I don't want to get too far ahead of us now, but well, I don't want to jump into that. We got to keep
Right.
these somewhat separated, although we've, bounced around, which is great.
Yeah.
But I
They're
think
related.
it's tough to talk about inflation and things without talking about monetary policy, right? And I am no expert in any of this. We haven't talked about a single thing that I'm an expert in. We talk about dental. We'll be a little bit more knowledgeable. But monetary policy, right? So, what is your take on fiat currency and gold, the gold standard? Good, bad? Do you think we should go back to a gold standard? Do you think it's good that we're not on a gold standard? How do you think the economy fundamentally works? Because I think we can tie that back into inflation. And I think it's important to talk about that.
I think we should have fiat gold. We should make gold out of thin air. No, just kidding. So,
okay, I was with you for like a half a second.
What? Yeah, no.
Yeah.
So the problem with the gold currency is that it is very prone towards hyper deflation, or not hyper, but deflation. It can't handle the amount of population that our current populations are. There's not physically enough gold, so the units of currency would not only deflate, but it becomes so crazy powerful that it just becomes very impractical and unwieldy. So gold as a something to tie to is not the way forward, sadly, because having assets is always a good thing. But physical assets, still remain very important, whether it be your house, your land, your lawnmower, tools. There's still they are still a currency. They're something that you can bargain with. So remembering that those things are still important is helpful. But as far as fiat currency goes itself, I think that is something that has to exist, which introduces a problem, because in order to get money into the economy, somebody has to make money out of nothing. And when they do, they benefit the most from it. And the people they give it to first benefit more than the people that they loan it to, because the market hasn't adjusted yet, and it creates some imbalances. It's sort of a necessary evil. So I don't like it, but it certainly beats rapid deflation.
Yeah.
So, but there are ways to make it where it doesn't totally imbalance the things. The problem is when you have things like well, like we've had in the past with unrestrained lending, where it's not really well restrained. We could talk about the Fed. It seems to be a little bit too deep for really what we want to talk about.
I have mixed feelings about
the bank has to exist.
Mixed feelings about the Fed, right? I agree with your whole assessment that it's like a necessary evil, right? I like that framing, because I think that a lot of people, especially on the right, want to go back to the gold standard or something like that, or it doesn't seem very practical with how the actual economy works. It doesn't jive up with much of reality from what I can tell. And it's not helpful anyway. I mean, why would you want to come back to gold for all the problems that you said, and so fiat currency is great. But I think that when you're talking about, and we'll probably get into this in the next question a little bit, so I'm going to back away, but from what I was about to say. But there was a policy that changed in, I want to say, the 60s. And I make up a lot of stuff on this channel, so you're going to have to research this on your own, but it was talking about banking policy and how much they are leveraging accounts, right? And so right now you're allowed to have like a 10-to-1 ratio of accounts on your books, right? So if I have actual cash in my bank of $10,000, I can loan out $100,000 as an asset, because it's 10-to-1. So I just have to have, and I want to say it was tighter than that after the Great Depression. But somewhere along the way, they started loosening it up so that you could have more cash available, right? And someone pointed to this in a podcast, and I wish I could attribute it to the right podcast. I don't know where I heard this, but I thought it was a fascinating thing. And it talked about how banking was sort of a more internal club, right? Where there were people that they knew each other. They were trying to pass this bank on to their children. There was some level of accountability there. And then it turned into more of the ability to have more cash and grow and scale up and scale out. And it sort of took the personal out of banking, the personal aspect out of banking. And it turned it much more into chasing the dollar, maybe you could say. And I thought it was important to bring up. I wish I had more details on that exact policy. And I might look in the comments. I might look it up and put it down there later if you're interested in that. It was fascinating conversation about banking and how the history of banking. So, but the thing is if you want to cause deflation, right? When you're in a hyperinflation situation, which I don't think we're going to have hyperinflation, right? But I think America's government and military is too powerful to have hyperinflation. Where do you have hyperinflation? In Germany when it fell apart, when it got defeated by the Allied powers, in Venezuela, where it's a communist country that had ridiculous leadership, in a third world country, basically. I mean, it's a wealthy country, but we have the benefit of might makes right. I mean, if you're who's going to replace it? The only country out there is even close to matching power economically would be China, and they don't have the military to back it up. Nobody's dethroning the dollar. We're not going to get hyperinflation to the point where it wrecks our economy.
That's not entirely true. So here's the things that have to exist for hyperinflation. One is an essential market like food that is then out of control because of shortage. So an intense shortage could cause it. Another thing could be just a low population for it to kind of work out against. So if you spend a lot of money compared to the population, but we have a large population, so that's not too likely. Or a series of really, really bad decisions. But again, hyperinflation is something that happens only after it's a series of neglect. So you can get to 20% and it'll just keep rolling at 20%, which is not good. That's really bad, 20% per year. But hyperinflation only starts to happen once you really get past that, when people's confidence in money is gone. So they stop using it, essentially. So then the money can then hyperinflate. So again, it's not likely to happen in the US.
Other countries tie their value of their money to the US dollar, not to gold, not to anything else, to the US dollar. We are the world currency. We have that position, and we largely have that position. And if anybody was going to dethrone us from that or take over, because something would have to replace it, something would have to be the world's replacement currency. And we're not going to let China do that without a war. And we would win that war. So we're not going to lose that battle. And at least currently, I mean, they're shooting hypersonic rockets around the world, and we didn't even know about it. I mean, we have a lot of cause for concern. I mean, there's a huge cause for concern, at least on my end. I think that you have our military power being in question now, and our economic power and the supply chain shortage, and all these things these need to be addressed now. And that was what I was going to get to. Okay, so regardless of how we got here, right? And because we've already moved past that, so we're really past this question, but I'm going to go ahead and ask this question again, and we'll set this up. Regardless of how we got here, what's next in the next few months to a year?
Doomsday. No. So in this next year, what we're looking at most likely is some intense inflation, not crazy, but we're looking at probably peaking out at 10%, and then we'll drop down to 5. But then at some point, decisions are going to have to be made by the American people, because the lawmakers are going to continue to push for getting more money into the economy. And I'm not talking about quantitative easing. I'm talking about just straight up printing and giving it to people. And the people they give it to will get the best usage of the money as inflation happens. And if something doesn't happen as far as getting more people in the workplace earning money and then being able to produce products for us to use, then our economy will crash. If we continue to have people leaving the workforce or relying on government welfare, in other words, if the GDP does not improve and we increase cash flow, there's no way that it will not be ramifications. There are different things that we can do to manipulate the market for a time, but this next year is going to determine whether we go into a high inflation, like 10% plus, 10 to 20%, I think, in the following year. So I really think that's what we're looking at. The analysis I'm talking about is not so much like, let me just show you the numbers type of analysis. It is trend based. There's an intuition that's going into it, and also a taking into account of the national mood. And by that, I mean both sides of it, because the center is growing shorter and shorter, smaller and smaller, as the middle class is also getting smaller and smaller. I'm not sure if that's related, but the extremes are going to be pulling at each other. And the more they do, they actually are at the odds of actually economic stability. The more those extremes pull for the things that they want, whether it be less spending or I'm trying to think of what the left side is really pulling for, more green spending, we'll call it, whatever they pull for. Those two things pulling against each other are going to actually create less confidence in the job market, and the job market will then suffer. And then we're going to see what I talked about with the following year. So the amount of ability for people to talk it out and to have that free discourse, people being intentional to talk to their neighbors and try to build bridges instead of blowing them up while we're talking about building bridges in our Congress is really good. What's going to make this difference in this year? Like I said, the people are going to make the choice. The choice is going to be, are we going to reason this out, or are we going to talk past each other all the time?
I love that.
Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, no, you're fine. I love that, because I think that you're very right. You're very on to something. We can't fix this if we don't agree on what the problem is, how we got here. Is it a problem? Is it not a problem? I feel like there's a lackadaisical approach with, like you're saying, the making fun of the treadmill, thing. There's a lighthearted approach to it. And I think that there's been a bubbling under the surface for years and years and years of nobody's addressing this middle class pain, this middle class pinch. And nobody's addressing this. And now we have this supply chain shortage. We have all these things. And who's it hurting the worst? It's the lower and middle class. And if the people that we put in charge there cannot step up and understand, and at least try to understand, then they're not going to have any kind of solutions. It has to be from the people. And I think that the left and the right now, I mean, we get divided on, okay, green spending or, taxes, more taxes, less taxes. It's like the right, I always make fun of, what's the solution? Tax cuts. That's what's going to get us out of this overinflation. It's tax cuts. It's got to be. And the left, it's like, certainly not we need climate change spending. We need to spend more money on windmills, or something, and targeted spending could be part of the picture. But that's the thing. Targeting spending should be part of the picture, and there has to be somebody that can get in front of people and sympathize with the people that are in pain in
It's
our
Jen
country, in our
Psaki. I'm telling
economy.
you, Jen Psaki for president. She's the only person who's actually speaking cogently. She's just on a really tight script.
Well, I don't necessarily know that I agree with that, but so but I think that there are people that out there that are talking about it. But I think that, okay, so for me to answer that question, what do I think is going to happen in the next 6 months to a year? I think that there's two things that's going to happen, and I'm going to paint the dark, bleak picture first, because I think it's, you always say, oh, doomsday predictions never come true, right? Well, I think this one could, because you have years of neglect, and there's only so much a marriage, a relationship, a country, anything can take, a friendship can take, before enough is enough. Had it with you. You're not listening, you're not responding, you're not paying attention to what's going on in the situation in my life. And that's where the American people are right now. So and I think that if anything could hit this point, it's the fact that there are no jobs. Is no money in the jobs that are available. There is no future for our kids. There is no ability to make anything. We have a sense of loss. This hollowing out of America narrative it just hits people so true, because we can all see it. We can all drive down the road and look at buildings, and it's like you can see that the places where there is newness, whatever, is like this like influencer culture or whatever, people that don't live on the same planet as us, that drive around in, whatever cars and live this sort of lavish life that doesn't make any sense. It doesn't jive with the rest of us, or the lived experience of the rest of us. And
I'm a lifestyle coach.
Yeah, exactly. And there's such a big disconnect that I don't see that it can go on forever. I know that it can't go on forever. And I think that now you're in a situation where it can't go on. The rich people can't even get stuff for Christmas for their kids this year, And so this is the dark picture. Okay. Over the next couple months, people are going to slowly start realizing that when you order things, there's longer times. When you go to the store, chicken prices going up, beef prices going up, eggs prices going up, gas prices going up, all these prices going up, buying a car, selling a car. I mean, your house, the value of your house, all of this great, the value of my house went up 60%. That's insane. Yeah. But it's going to flatten out. And so now there's not going to be this like, oh, well, COVID sucks, but at least the, value of my house is great. That's awesome. And I was stuck indoors. So I did some projects, and I had some fun with the kids, when we were locked down. Like all of that's going to go away. And there's just going to be a reckoning, so to speak. And the psychology of the country is going to take a downturn. And I have a feeling it's going to be in January, right after the Christmas, spirit is over and we all didn't get our gifts. And then you finally get your stuff, whatever in January that you ordered in November and for December, and you got it in January because it was all backward. You finally got it. Now there's going to be a real, slump off in sales, right? And you're not going to be able to get essentials, and you're not going to need all the toys, and the economy is going to take a huge downturn, and you're going to still continue to see prices skyrocketing, and people are going to panic, run on stores, run on supplies, all kinds of stuff. And then you're going to be in almost like a depression state, right? People are going to start laying people off because they can't afford to be a business. There was a lady
going to take down
January, February, March.
It's too early, but anyways, keep going.
I don't know, but I prognosticate that something will happen in the near future that will change the mood. There will be something that causes the catalyst, whether it's a natural disaster or something, whatever, that stresses the supply chain even more. People can't get their socks or whatever. They, it was toilet paper last time. It could be anything. It was rice in 2008 or something, whatever. There's always something, and it causes these massive runs on certain items. But it's not going to be just one item. And that's why I think that it's going to be so broad that it's going to cause people to just have this real sense of like, what is going on in the world? China might actually, attack a ship in the, whatever, and then we're not going to respond to it, and then we're going to lose confidence in everything. I don't know. There's 1,000 scenarios that could happen, but you're already having a death by 1,000 cuts right now. I'd say we're at about 950 cuts. We got 50 more cuts available until there's a shift that happens that is beyond the ability for people in power to maintain credibility. Mm-hmm. You're not going to be credible unless you have drastic action, right? And so at that point, the only solution for the government is, okay, we're going to have the U.S. military take over the supply chain. Instead of truckers delivering your goods to your grocery store, it's going to be a Humvee. And the Humvee is going to drive down, and you're going to start seeing, the interstate is going to be taken over. Travel is going to be suspended for a month until we get the supplies train back in order, something, whatever, to restore some common confidence or something in the land. I don't know. I'm just thinking like drastic worst case scenario. I don't think that there's really any situation where you get to like a prepper's, like the grid is down and now I have to live on my bucket of, beans and my rain collector or whatever. I don't think that the world is going to be an apocalyptic, post-apocalyptic Mad Max situation based on this current series of events outside of nuclear war, which none of us can control. None of us, there's no reason to talk about that, because it could happen at any moment. You have no idea. Mm-hmm. But on the realistic scale, I think that this is probably something that is capable of happening. But I would say that that's the worst case. The best case for me is American economy is amazingly resilient. I was 18 years old in 2008 when I went to, it was March, I remember for some reason, and I was filling up my super old car that was given to me, and I was filling up the gas tank, and I think it was $6 a gallon or something. It was like this crazy, I don't even remember what it was, a supply chain, whatever. I don't know, some hurricane. I don't know what it was. Not hurricane, March, it doesn't make sense. Something caused the gas prices to go, and it was kind of, I guess, maybe the Lehman story, Lehman Brothers story broke with the banking crash, whatever. I don't know how
there was the bubble popped. I don't remember when that was though. The BP one.
I don't know what it was, but the thing is if people think that the economy is going downhill, right? I'm going to go get gas for my car. I need essentials. So when a truck comes through and delivers gas here, and then they deliver gas at the next one, and everybody's getting their whatever normal routine. Well, if everybody goes, I need an extra can of gas, the gas runs out. Then the truck comes up here and it drops off its gas here, and then it has to go back and get some more. And so they run out of gas, and then it causes this crazy, like, because we have just-in-time shipping. Everything in the modern age is don't have too much inventory. Inventory sitting in your business is wasted dollars. You need to get that just in time to sell to the customer. Stay lean, lean. Just remove steps. If more efficiency in our system. All of this sort of like this is the way we build our economy since going back for years, decades. So you're talking about I was painting the better case scenario. Why didn't I go into that? Anyway, so better case. Yeah, this is a Johnny Random show. I can say what I want, dang it. So the better case scenario is that you get a situation where you have a short term, runs on things, but I think that the economy is resilient enough, and people's faith in the United States and the ability to pull through is there enough. You probably have a wave election in 2020 where it flips, a bunch of seats in the House and the Senate, bunch of upsets, whatever. Doesn't really change a lot of things in the trajectory of the country per se. but it does make people feel good that they get to vote and get to have a say, and some semblance of normal, starts happening. Things are going, back to normal. I honestly, okay, so yeah, let's. Do you have anything to say to that before
No,
I move to the last question?
no.
No, okay. The last question is, what is your solution? So if you had a magic fairy wand and you could just abracadabra and fix the current situation and fix what you think going forward is the best solution, or what policies do you think would do it? Solution.
I don't trust fairies, so I'm pretty sure I wouldn't use a fairy wand. I would just leave it laying there on the table. But
Wizard
as far
wand?
as, huh?
Wizard wand?
Yeah, I don't know. So solution. Sodium chloride first. That's a good solution. But taxes. Taxes are a part of the problem. I mean, like magic fairy wand, going all out here. The tax law is ridiculous, and it's allowing a lot of crazy bureaucracy to happen. There's complaints that the rich are not paying their share, and that the solution to that is to tax them more. Well, yeah, that's not likely to be very effective for a number of reasons. One is there's so many loopholes built into the laws that already exist. You would really need to get rid of the loopholes, not increase taxation, and make it something that is sustainable. So the reason that people don't ever make it into the middle class is because there's no advantage to being in the middle class. If you can, get things taken care of as a low class citizen and not put in a minimal effort, why would you want to go up? Except for security. But if you're getting taxed more because you're now in the middle class and you start taxing the middle class to death, why would they? It really takes all incentivization away from becoming middle class, or making it up to the upper class. The only reason that people go to the upper class right now is usually, I think, a psychological imbalance where they think that they're going to be happy if they have things. And that's something that most people share to some degree or other, but some people seem to be more drawn towards it than others as a motivator to their actions. But so fixed tax law, that's one huge component of fixing this inflation problem, because it's really causing problems with our ability to increase our gross product. It's disincentivizing work. That is one of the biggest drivers. The other thing is make sure that the money that you're injecting into the economy is doing something useful. There's a strong suspicion in myself and many other people. I don't care if I looked up some of the things that were getting derided by Republicans, like in this new tax bill, there's something for tree equity. First of all, I think that the term tree equity is kind of dumb, but the idea behind it is actually pretty decent. So the idea is that trees are beneficial to people in cities as well as those who live outside of cities and in the suburbs. So if we say that trees are good, why don't we plant trees in urban areas? That's kind of what drives that. Of course, there's a lot of CRT built into that, and we're not going to talk about that right now. But the fact of the matter is that money going into those programs, if I thought was actually going to achieve actually greenifying and in a meaningful way those places, I would be more than happy to see money being invented and put into those channels. But I don't think it's likely to be the case. Every time that we've tried to do things like that, where create like beautiful housing for low-income families, what ends up is that we create these nice houses, and then the family moves in, and then 10 years later, this house looks like a wreck. And there's a variety of reasons, but one of them is it just wasn't well thought out. It wasn't sustainable. And a lot of what we're going to do with those green trees is actually probably going to be very unsustainable. And that goes to all of those programs. So what I think we should be doing is to try to actually empower the states to use the money without strings. We're putting a lot of strings on all the money that we give to the states. But if we wanted to get money into the states, or get into the money into the hands of people who are going to be responsible with it, give it to the state legislatures to then put into their own states. It would relieve a lot of the tax burden on a lot of states if they had the ability to just cover their own roads and bridges, cover their own other things like that. Make sure that this money gets spent well. And then I think we're going to see a tremendous amount of increase in, again, GDP, because that's what we're aiming to increase. If we could inflate GDP, it wouldn't matter how much money we're injecting into the system. We could spend 3.5 trillion and it would work if we could get the GDP up. So magic wand, very short answer there.
No, that's fine. That's good. I mean, I like a lot of what you're saying. I don't necessarily agree, maybe, but I mean, because I haven't thought through like exactly. I'm not ready to commit that much, but I will say my magic wand solution would be take the yes, take this multi-trillion dollar package and turn it into something where you're building manufacturing, you're building supply chain things right in America, right? Because we're so behind the curve. We're 20, 30 years, 40 years behind the curve on building these things. We don't have the technology to build the microchips. We have to build the technology to build the plant, to build the, to build the chips that we need to, it's like we're so behind the curve that we need literally, in my opinion, government spending into these programs, into the United States economy to make things here. We can't just make it here in America, because how are you going to do that? There's so many barriers. There's so many barriers to entry into a lot of businesses right now. And the cost imbalance, because we've let it get so wild out of hand, you would just go get it somewhere else so much cheaper. That my magic berries, well, I don't know if that's magic fairy wand, because I think that's something that's actually feasible with doing. But if I don't think that that's going to happen. So I put that in fairy wand. I will claim that. I don't think that's even close to happening, but I wish it would. I think that's where the money should go. And I think the principle is, if you want a green economy, if you want a clean economy, if you want good jobs and you want good people to do good things and take care of each other, I kind of do agree with what you're saying, is you have to take care of those like bare necessity things first, right? So if you're a city official and you get $20 million to plant trees in your community, right? But you got homeless people and you got, we don't need these greens. We'll do 20 million for that. And I'll just put this in my pocket because I don't know how to, it just, there's a sense of hopelessness that I cannot fix this. I don't have the ability to fix this. It's too complicated. And there's nobody behind me willing to support me doing. Have you ever tried to do a project at work and you didn't get support from your boss?
Maybe once.
Yeah, I have plenty of times. I tried to take on a project at work and didn't get any support from my boss. And I tried, and then I gave up.
Yeah.
And it was a great idea, or it was a great thought process or something. And it would have, potentially, done great things for a company.
Yeah.
But they weren't supporting it. They had different focus. So I think that's the problem. There's a lot of people at city level and local level that are willing and wanting to do a lot of things that don't have the money. The federal government has the money and they're giving it to them, but it's got to be for this, got to be for that. So yeah, maybe I agree with, just giving it to them and letting them go. But at the same time, too, you got to have some level of accountability. That's where I think that they just need to get on the same page.
I left out the one thing that really would have made it work is actually having the people involved in how this gets used, and actually getting people's thoughts and making it a public works thing that is accountable. Like this gets published on our website, our state website. This is how the money is used, and this is where it's going, and this is what it's done so far, and people will see that. And people then can respond. But yeah, it's that accountability.
Let me finish this thought, because but you brought up you can't be talking about social, welfare, less or more, means tested, taxes, more taxes, less taxes, all of these conversations that we had in the New Deal, New Deal politics. And all of these things that we talked about over, decades and decades and decades, how much, the Ronald Reagan, less, more, all these different things, Bush tax cuts, whatever, like all of these things, we have moved past that, and we can pretty much all agree, except for a small sliver of people, that we have to have some level of social spending. We don't want people to have, not have food stamps or not have some ability, some tax credits, things like that. We want to take care of the poor in our community, right? We've largely agreed on how to do that with Social Security. We take care of our older people, whatever. So we don't have to go back and reinvent the wheel. Right now, our politics is stuck in the past with these wanting to relitigate things that are relatively settled. And we can't talk about globalism. We can't talk about our supply chains. We can't talk about what the modern era is, the hollowing out of America. What are the solutions to that? Because we want to talk about the middle class is all hollowed out. Okay, so we're going to talk about politics and taxes and whatever. We're not. Our politicians are stuck in the wrong issues, all the wrong issues. So if I had a magic fairy wand, I would erase their brains from all this old nonsense and have people actually talking about the problems that we have. So like I said, I think that, the infrastructure package is basically a waste of, flushing that money away, because it's not going to go to the things that it's supposed to go to. It's not going to be used how it's supposed to, whether it's good or bad, whether you agree with it or you disagree with it. It's not going to be used how it's supposed to be used. And it's not for lack of people's good intentions, maybe. I think it's missing the point. It's like you come to me and you tell me your symptoms are, X, Y, Z, and I tell you, okay, you know what you need to do? You need to go down and you need to drink some water, or whatever, or you need to eat 3 meals a day. Okay, I already know that. I already know this stuff. We're talking about what is my specific pain in this moment or whatever. You're giving me solutions to something that is not relevant to what I am needing. And so that's, I think I pretty well covered policy. I don't know. I feel like I'm beating a dead horse a little bit. I don't know if I'm getting into anything new there, but
resurrect that horse real quick.
Okay, go ahead.
Let's not resurrect.
No, we're gonna beat it.
Yeah, it's better to beat the dead one than the live one. It's cruel. I think in general, I would agree. There's always the question of social, like how social spending should be done, what level of government should be doing it. I don't disagree that social spending should be done to some extent. I think it's too far and kind of weird a lot of times the way that it's given out.
What is that? Okay, great. Okay, we can agree. We can agree.
Yeah.
You can agree. I can agree. 1,000 people will all agree that we need to have some level of social spending. Maybe it's a little too much. Maybe it's too. You need to do it this way, that way, whatever. Like it's all
that
just
won't fix
arguments
inflation.
around the edges, right? But what is causing our current situation? What are the needs of the people today? People need more money in their bank account from their jobs. They need higher pay because their cost of their house has gone up. We don't want the house of their price to go down, so we need their pay to go up to match what is happening in the rest of our economy, right? The rich keep getting richer and the poor keep getting medium, like it's just incremental things. But the cost of everything is going up. To me, that is a problem. That is an economic problem. And it's been going on, and we can't just look away. We can't just say, let's talk about this. So let's talk about that. I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm just saying, like, the current political climate is not addressing the needs of the people in the moment. Right. And I think that I think all of that is why we're having such an economic disaster. And I think we're on the precipice of the globalist system was fine when there was no coronavirus. I'm not going to say it's fine because you had Trump and Hillary as candidates for president, and you had the hollowing out of America, and nothing is fine when you have those two people running for office. We're not okay. We're not okay. In 2016, we knew we're not okay.
It was the battle of the Tweedles.
Yeah, but nobody, instead of Trump, who said a lot of the right things, He did not. Like the first thing he did in there, okay, we're going to cut taxes. They could have been Mitt Romney. They could have been any Republican. None of this made sense for what he did based on what he said. How was that going to fix this problem of globalization? He did do some things in verbiage on tough on China, but where are we now? We have the lab leak. Whether the virus came from a lab in China or just the Wuhan market or wherever the official story is, it doesn't matter. The fact is, it came from China and it rocked the world. Okay, so now not only do they make all of our stuff, they also unleashed a deadly virus on the world. Like, these are the responsible actors that we're going to have. Like, we have to have a better relationship with China. Okay, I think that we need to have a better relationship with China, but they're not proving themselves responsible. And I think that we're looking at the dollar signs on how the, business, and I'm against big business and against big government, both. You know what I mean? I'm not like for I wouldn't, but I'm also for a strong companies as well. And I'm for a strong government as well. But I just think that they have to be separate and they have to be responsible and there has to be more accountability. And so that's where I come down on all this.
Yeah. There was a time when unions kind of helped to counterbalance things, but then they became a part of the problem instead of the part of the solution at some point.
But we have to resurrect it. There has to be some entity that can stand up and for the worker, because a worker on his own is nothing. One worker bee cannot change it. You have to have a union. You have to have the group of worker bees that stand up to the powerful class. Okay, we have to have unions come back somehow, but it can't be political machines. Like they're corrupted right now in so many ways, I think, and we have to have better union policy. I think that would help. So that's my fairy magic wand. And I think we've pretty well taken this topic all the way around. And I think we're going to get into plenty of other things in the future. And I really appreciate your time and going into all this with me today. And it was fun. We'll do this some more. And
I really think our topic exploded. Maybe we inflated into other topics as well, but it was good.
It burst into 30 different topics, and then we tried to chase them, and then we tied them back. And so I think we did a fairly good job on this episode for having a 4-question outline for how we were going to do it. So thanks for your time. And that is it for the Johnny Random Show. Until next time, we're out.